Good morning. I'm Mark Hurl, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees at the Mainline Unitarian Church. Please let me introduce our worship team today. We have Don Saras-Borschelt, our Director of Lifetime Religious Education, Emma Mellon, today's Worship Associate, Meta Lark, our musical guest, and our guest minister, the Reverend Dr. Gabriele Parks. The Reverend Dr. Gabriele Parks came to the U.S. as a legal immigrant from Germany in 1991 with her husband Roger and her then 6-year-old twins. Well, the kids are 37 now, if you're doing the math, and obviously a lot has happened since. Reverend Gabby discovered Unitarian Universalism in Columbia, Maryland in 1996. After first earning a bachelor's degree in therapeutic recreation, she felt the call to UU ministry, and in 2001 went to Lancaster Theological Seminary, where she received her Master's of Divinity in 2006. Since then, she has served 5 congregations, 3 of them as a specially trained transitional minister. In 2012, she went back to seminary, this time to Wesley in Washington, D.C., where she was awarded a Doctor of Ministry degree in the field of narrative theology. The UU congregations she served were in New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Michigan, and then again in Pennsylvania, until she retired in February of 2019. She now serves her husband, 3 cats, 1 rambunctious dog, and about 24 cayenne goldfish in 2 large ponds in their home in York, Pennsylvania. So welcome, Reverend Gabby, and all of you to MLUC. It's good to have you with us. We gather in a loving community of faith to support one another as we search for meaning and purpose, working together to bring compassion, equity, and responsible stewardship to the world we share. We are Unitarian Universalists. Our denomination is formed by the merger of Unitarianism, which holds that God is one, and Universalism, which tells us that whatever our ultimate destiny may be, we will all share in it equally. So we believe all people are inherently worthy and dignified. We affirm religious freedom and celebrate and accelerate diversity. We welcome you, whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever your background or personal circumstance. We are delighted that you chose to be with us, whether in the main meeting room or via Zoom or YouTube, and we hope you'll find your experience with us to be time well spent. Especially warm greeting to those of you who are visiting us in person today. After the service, we encourage you to help yourself to coffee or tea, and then join me and other MLUCers. We look forward to meeting you and welcoming you. You'll also find more information about us at the welcome table in the lobby or at our website. And speaking of information, I have just a few announcements. You see many are in your order of service. I'll just point out a couple of these. One is that we'll be having the annual meeting on next Sunday at 11:30. If you want to attend via Zoom, you'll need to attend one of the training sessions. They're short, just to make sure everyone knows how to participate and how you can vote via Zoom. So the first training session is today at 2 o'clock. Today at 2 o'clock on Zoom, of course. The link is on the church calendar on the website. The second one is Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. A couple other announcements. One is next Sunday at 9 a.m. Dave will lead a conversation for being a Jewish Unitarian. He'll lead a conversation for those with a Jewish background who are members or considering membership. Bagel breakfast will be solved. Contact Jessica for information on registering. On the 21st at 10 a.m., I think the 21st would be a Saturday, from 10 to 1:30, join us for an overview of Unitarian Universalism. So this is the pathway to membership. They'll be addressing the following important questions. What is church? What do we believe? How does one live a righteous life? And they will also discuss ways you can get to know this faith community. Again, contact Jessica for more info. Let's see. And just to point out, the annual congregational meeting is next Sunday at 11:30, immediately after the service. And now, if you've written all that down, you take a moment to silence your cell phones, and please join me in affirming our mission. Together, we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith.
I just want to add a very brief addendum to the annual meeting next week. There will be childcare, and we will feed the kids pizza. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm feeding the kids pizza. We light this chalice for all the beautiful ways of becoming family. All are born, all will die. In between, may we love each other. May we nurture healing love, creative love, caring love, whatever our scars or blessings, together today.
Good morning. Thank you, Eliza Jansen. This was beautiful. Reminds me of the lark I've been hearing as a child, traipsing through the fields in Bavaria. I haven't heard a lark over here. I might be in the wrong climate zone. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be here again. This is probably my 4th visit, if I remember correctly. Started about 15 years ago, and I remember, and I just asked Eliza, Kirsten Potter and Bob, they were making music at my very first visit, and we became real good friends. Another thing I need to say before I start, I have an allergic reaction to a pill, a side effect to a pill I'm taking, so my mouth is very dry, and I have to constantly sip, so please forgive me. If I didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to understand me. The words for the call to worship were written by the Reverend Desell. Our community is filled with beauty. When you open the door to greet me, beauty begins. When you share with me what's important to you, beauty is there as we listen. When we join hands to practice compassion, beauty's heart blooms like a flower. When we teach or learn or work for justice, beauty abounds, sparks joy in all. Let us worship beauty today, not just for today, the beauty we seek and the beauty we nurture. Let us worship.
We are having a little bit of difficulty with the projector today, so I'm going to read an actual book. There are many, many ways to become a family. Sometimes we're born into a family and we stay in that family. Our story today is about a different way, which is adoption. This particular story is about the experiences of a child and a birth mother and an adoptive mother who never meet in the international adoption. Other times people have open adoptions where everyone knows everyone else. And of course, there are families with a dad or 2 dads, some of which include adoption. There's no one right way to become a family or to be a parent. And it's okay to choose not to be pregnant or be a parent too. With that said, here is a beautiful story. Once there were 2 women who never knew each other. One you do not know, the other you call mother. 2 different lives shaped to make you one. One became your guiding star, the other became your sun. The first one gave you life, the second taught you to live it. One gave you a body, the other taught you games. One gave you a talent, the other taught you aims. One gave you emotions, the other calmed your fears. One saw your first sweet smile, the other dried your tears. One found a home for you that she could not provide. The other prayed for a child her hope was not denied. And now you ask, of course you do, the question others ask me too. This place or your birthplace, which are you a daughter of? Both of them, my darling, and 2 different kinds of love. Happy Mother's Day to anyone who's celebrating or mourning today. I'd like to invite the children to come out into the atrium with me, and we'll get everybody sorted out as to where they belong.
Good morning, everybody. This is the time in our service for our offering. And for the month of May, our offering outreach partner is the Darby Creek Valley Association. We have had a long association here at the church with this organization. Indeed, I would say in many ways we are the Darby Creek Watershed. If the graphics were working, I would show you a map of the watershed, showing literally with an X marks the spot where our church is, and it is right in the heart of the watershed. The watershed covers 77 square miles across this region, and 500,000 people and many thousands of species of fauna and flora live in it. We get our water from it. Our treated wastewater is returned to it downstream, and many of us enjoy its parks and paths throughout the year. And after the rain we've had, it is certainly very full at the moment. The watershed is also diverse. It ranges from beautiful forests and streams in some of its upper reaches, through industrial wastelands, down to the John Heinz National Wildlife Refuge, where it enters the Delaware River. And the Darby Creek Valley Association is dedicated to the preservation and restoration of this critical natural resource. And this morning, I am deeply honored and pleased to have Aurora Desell, the operations manager for Dcba, with us, and she's going to tell us more about the essential work that the organization does. So, Aurora, please.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you all for having me here today. So I wanted to start just by, we don't have the graphic, but I do have some of these brochures to show you what a watershed looks like, what our watershed is. And actually, as I was sitting down there looking up at this lovely display of trees, I was thinking that actually looks a lot like a watershed. Because, you know, you've got the smaller tributary branches coming together and the larger branches, and it all comes down. And that's what a watershed is. It all comes down to one main point. And I think that is a really lovely way to think about environmental activism and protection when you're thinking about a watershed, because water connects us all. You know, the watershed doesn't know municipal boundaries or, you know, the lines that we make up. It's just where all the water flows. And the things that we do in the top of the watershed affect the lower watershed. You know, so ordinance and things that happen up here are going to affect stormwater that comes down to the lower watershed areas, such as those around before John Heinz, like the Eastwick neighborhood of Philadelphia. If you've heard of a lot of flooding they get there, they're impacted. They're kind of at the mercy of the whole watershed. So when you're caring for our local environment, you're not just caring for your town, you're caring for the entire watershed, and then ultimately, when it flows into the Delaware River, as Terry said, that's the drinking water for 15 million people. So water is just, it connects us all. Water is life, and that's why Dcba's mission is so important to me. And the things that we do to protect the watershed, we promote rain gardens, green stormwater management, rain barrels. We organize volunteers for trash cleanups and tree plantings, which Terry and others here in this group have been a part of, and I'm so grateful for your service and volunteerism. It's so wonderful, and it's so joyful to be around the group, I have to say. So if anyone has any questions, please always feel free to reach out to me. Terry, you're welcome to share my contact information, and I will leave some of these here, wherever Terry tells me to, so you're welcome to pick these up as well. And thank you again for having me and for supporting DCBA this month.
Thank you so much, Aurora. The title of today's sermon is The Beauty of Nurturing, but I would suggest there's also some beauty in naturing. And maybe in keeping with this idea of Mother's Day and the theme of the sermon, I would invite you to adopt Mother Nature. So please, do give generously to our offering and help support the DCBA. If the ushers would please come forward. In addition, if you're watching on Zoom or would like to give electronically, you can click on the contribution link on the homepage to the church's website. If we did have the graphics, I think we would be able to tell you how to do it, using text, but unfortunately we don't have it available to us. So please do click on the website and donate that way if you prefer. Thank you all so much.
Good morning. Every Sunday, we light candles of community in support of members who have shared joys and sorrows from their lives. After each announcement, would you join me in saying, "We hold you in our hearts"? On this Mother's Day, we remember all those who have mothered us throughout our lives. We hold you in our hearts. On this Mother's Day, we remember the mothers who have lost children to the war in Ukraine. To these grieving mothers, we hold you in our hearts. Harvey Snyder reports that Carol is resting in Paoli Hospital awaiting a cardiac procedure on Monday. Carol and Harvey, we hold you in our hearts. I ask that you celebrate with me my niece, Dr. Brenda Mellon, who will assume her new position as Director of Alumni Relations at Black Forest Academy in Germany. Brenda, we hold you in our hearts. Marilee Marshall is saddened by the death of her neighbor, Bernard Dietschuld, after a long battle with cancer. He was a brilliant scientist an avid bird watcher, and he won many Pennsylvania Horticultural Society awards for his garden, as well as being a devoted father, grandfather, and husband. We remember Bernard, his widow Renata, their family, and Marilee, and we hold you in our hearts. Marilee also reports that her partner, Rick Rickard, is now in the Wayne Rehab Center and getting excellent rehabilitation services. Rick, we hold you in our hearts. Bob and Lisa Marie Crane would like to light a candle for their daughter, Thera Ringhofer, and her family. Thera, who lives in Finland, took her family with her on a business trip to Belgium. When they arrived, Thera, her husband, and 2 of the children tested positive for COVID. And Bob tells me that the whole family now has it. Their daughter, Thera, is Tara? Their daughter, Tara, is especially ill. So instead of enjoying Belgium, they are holed up in a B&B. Tara and your family, we wish you a speedy recovery, and we hold you in our hearts. Elise Lang mourns the loss of 2 loving, inspiring, and uplifting women in her life. Elise, we hold you in our hearts. And Chris Cavallari shares her family's joy at the marriage of their son, William, and his new bride, Maura. William and Maura and the whole Cavallari family, we hold you in our hearts. And for the joys and sorrows not shared aloud, we hold you in our hearts. Thank you. Today's reflection is about Mother's Day. Our culture tends to simplify holidays, and that's certainly true about Mother's Day. I'll read this poem twice because it's short, and then we'll have a few minutes of silence so that you can consider your own experience of mothers mothering, being mothered. Mother's Day. It's about more than flowers and grateful, sentimental cards. Mother's Day honors deep earth potency. Think fierce blood red, relentless spring green, new moon night black. Celebrate vast, unruly urges, the push of sprouts from dirt, the devouring yawn of a quake. Understand this: mothers give life, voluptuous, unpredictable, chaotic. There's nothing pink about it. It's about more than flowers and grateful, sentimental cards. Mother's Day honors deep earth potency. Think fierce blood red, relentless spring green, new moon night black. Celebrate vast, unruly urges, the push of sprouts from dirt, the devouring yawn of a quake. Understand this: mothers give life, voluptuous, unpredictable, chaotic. There's nothing pink about it.
Thank you again. Beautiful. Your minister, Reverend David, told me that this congregation is using the resources of the Soul Matters program, which is absolutely a wonderful program. So you are familiar with it, and what I'm starting with is the introduction to this month's theme, the theme of nurturing beauty. Beauty, we appreciate it. How could we not? We wonder at it, get absorbed in it, analyze it, if it's got a frame around it. We make it, grow it, point at it, collect it, share it, save it. But how often do we listen to it? How often do we ask, what is it trying to get me to hear? We must find our way back. We must find our way back to those questions that were once alive but are now buried deep. What if beauty is here to make us wise? What if beauty is the way the sacred speaks? Yes, yes, it does so much more than decorate. It demands, it calls, it asks for commitment. It doesn't just say, love and appreciate me. It says, protect me, fight for me. It steps out in front of us and points to a precious world that needs our help. It paints a picture of new ways of living and declares, follow me there. It pleads, nurture a new relationship with me, one that allows me to talk. So that's from the worship resources of the May packet. The introduction for the small group ministry packet is from the philosopher Blaise Pascal, who said, in difficult times, carry something beautiful in your heart. I see a bit of a contrast in those two openings, but I will get back to that later. So Pascal said, in difficult times, carry something beautiful in your heart. These are indeed difficult times. They require courage, commitment, hope, and self-love. And all of these are sustained by beauty. We find the courage to fight after falling in love with a beautiful vision to fight for. We maintain our commitment only by finding the beauty that nourishes us. In other words, we need to find beauty because it nourishes us. At the same time, we nurture beauty. We need to nurture beauty because if we don't, we won't recognize it when we need it, will we? This reminder made it easier for me to find a topic for yet another Mother's Day sermon. After all, mothers are nurturing, right? And there isn't much that's more beautiful to observe than a nurturing mother-child relationship. But not all mothers are nurturing, and not all nurturers are mothers. Several congregations I know of that don't observe Mother's Day at all anymore. Too many of their members have been hurt, even abandoned, and too many who have been nurturers were not addressed. So no, not all mothers are nurturing, and not all who nurture are mothers. I claim that nurturing is always beautiful. To begin with, nurturing is always positive. It's defined in dictionaries as to care for and encourage the growth or development of someone or something. And I was looking at this morning's word of the day at the dictionary is nurturance, which I thought is interesting. And it was, they cite an article where this is used, and this is an article of a psychologist who wrote about the children going back to schools. And what they need most after the pandemic is nurturance. And she said, we do not have enough counselors to take care of the children, but I can teach, and they can teach teachers that the children become, what was that about, affirming, that there is humor, and that there is nurturing, caring for with affection. So, this was not in a sermon. My colleague, the Reverend Rebecca Savage, wrote a poem where she claims that beauty is our birthright. She writes, "Sometimes we awake in the morning with the endless to-do list rattling through our thoughts, or with the nagging reminders what was left undone yesterday. Sometimes we'd rather go back to sleep, but then, often enough, the first sliver of sunshine dances across our face. Beautiful. Or the wafting scent of breakfast glides over us. Beautiful. Signs of life blossom all around us, to include inside us. Beautiful. Beauty is our birthright." What I think she's saying is beauty can nurture us. And I would like to add a claim. To behold nurturing is always seeing something beautiful. Let me share a few stories with you from my experience in ministry and my own personal experience. The first time I came across this was when my sister was pregnant, and she, 40 years ago almost. She asked me to be with her in the delivery room because her husband was a chicken. So, well, I don't know. It's not what it is in German, but I'm not going to tell you the German one. Anyway, during the last 2 hours of labor, my sister Evie became more frustrated and more angry. With each new wave of pain, she started cursing her husband and cursing the doctors and cursing God, and almost broke my hand. When the baby was finally born and this young boy loudly greeted the cold and strange world, she lifted her head, her blotchy face and sweaty, and she yelled, You be quiet, young man. I just about had it." And I looked at her, and she looked awful. But I could see she was exhausted. But only a few minutes later, the nurse brought the baby to her, and she looked down at the baby, and then he started to nurse. And I've never seen her more beautiful. Her eyes were glowing, and she had this mysterious Mona Lisa smile on her face I've never seen before, and never after. My next story is very different. It was members of my congregation who decided to adopt a girl child from China. They picked her up at the Baltimore airport, and little Peony was frustrated, angry, whatever, because of the flight, and 6-month-old, So she screamed, and she didn't stop screaming until they arrived here in Pennsylvania, 2 hours more driving. They were desperate. They didn't know what to do. They had read books. They had talked to people. Nothing. So when they arrived at the house and they got out of the car, and her mother opened the door, and she looked at her daughter and says, "Oh my God, what happened? You look awful." But then they went in with the baby, and she sat down in a rocking chair, and she held the baby, and the baby calmed down and then accepted the bottle. And so things were much more peaceful. But what Anne told me about those first moments, Jim's father had taken lots of photos, and she and Jim both were radiant. You couldn't see a trace of only minutes ago that horrible scare that they went through. So, being able to nurture helped them both very much, and they became radiant. When I met them, by the way, Peony is now 8 years old, and you can see what a great relationship she has with her parents. My next story is about my own daughter. My twins were born 9 weeks early, so both of them had a lot of difficulties in their early days. And one of my daughters has cerebral palsy, so she was quite a handful in her earlier years. I was quite worried when I was invited to visit her schoolroom for the first time, because I thought, oh my God, they're going to complain about her. I stepped in, and there was this young man sitting next to her and very patiently explaining to her why she could not do what she wanted at that moment. I could see the affection and the deep desire to help her understand in his eyes. This was not in his job description. Special needs teachers, even they do not have it in their job descriptions, but all of them I have come across are nurturers. I wish I'd had a camera at that time just to see the expression in this young man's face. The last story happened about 4 years ago, a month before I retired, when a young couple asked me about adoption, because she was all in favor, and he said, well, but we don't know what genetic problems an adopted child would have. And I understood his worries, absolutely, but I could give him a different angle to think about. One of my dear friends, Clarissa, is a pediatric geneticist at NIH, and a few years ago they found out that even biological parents have no control over how much our personalities and our character traits are due to our genetic makeup. There is more to this nature versus nurture thing. Because she told us, because of gene expression, in other words, the way we turn out in the end, it is largely, okay, let me do this again. The way we turn out in the end is largely influenced by the environment. Brian and Melissa were very fascinated by that. Our conversation ended there, and they said they would go home and study more about it. Now, I was curious, and I went and talked with Clarissa again, and I'm not going to bore you with too much science, but if you play Scrabble, there's a really cool word, epigenetic. There are epigenetic markers, and the epigenomes are like volume knobs for our genes. They will adjust the intensity of gene expression. So environmental factors such as chemical exposure, diet, and lifestyle issues can alter these markers over time. It means that even in identical twins born with the same epigenome, getting different epigenetic markers could activate the gene expression for schizophrenia in one twin and not in the other. The same is true for colon cancer or Alzheimer's, to name just a few. Let me return to the beginning, to Pascal. In difficult times, carry something beautiful in your heart. The most beautiful aspect of nurturing, in my mind, is that it is always honest. It comes from the heart. I call it soul, because the heart is different, but anyway. You cannot fake nurturing. It's a very important aspect for me, because the last time I was here, some of you might remember I talked about the book I'm writing, which is about the narrative of the soul. And I don't want you to be turned off by that word, because it's not the religious aspect I'm talking about, writing about. It's about this very important third part of our being. We have the mind and the body, but we also have the soul, and I claim this is the basis of everything. Again, not the religious part. So, this is why the word nurturing is so important for me, because being nurturing means that you're acting out of something that is deep inside you. Nurturing is not controlled by your brain. You cannot command it. You cannot order yourself, now be nurturing. Just like you cannot order yourself to fall out of love. It's been easier to. Nurturing is more than taking care, more than just gentle touches or soft voices, more than pampering. Love, empathy, compassion are prerequisites for nurturing. By the same token, you receive nurturing with your soul. It is not something you feel when you are touched by every caring nurse or any enthusiastic teacher. If you are raised in a family where your physical and mental health needs are completely fulfilled, but there is not enough nurturing, you will become spiritually crippled. As being the recipient of nurturing, I can only say that I cannot really describe why it is different from just taking care of a need I have. I just know that when I experience it, I know it. I know the difference, whether the person who interacts with me is a nurturing person or not. I bet you all do too. So that's what makes nurturing so beautiful for me. It feels good whether I receive it or give it. It's beautiful because it comes from and goes to our soul. It's beautiful because it is honest. I invite you to recognize the beauty we can see in any person who nurtures, a biological or adoptive parent, teachers, nurses, doctors. People who nurture always have a clearly visible, peaceful expression on their face. It might only be for those few moments, but they are very beautiful moments to behold. If you don't believe me, just look around you. A young mother looking at the baby she's holding, a junior league baseball coach who's very patiently explaining something again and again to a young player, or a retiree who is lovingly pruning his rose bushes. Let me go a full circle in my conclusion. We now know that genetic predisposition is not destiny. Neither is nature nor nurture. Therefore, you cannot blame our mothers. We cannot blame our mothers or our adoptive mothers for everything that goes wrong in our life. So let's cut them some slack. Happy Mother's Day. Makes me want to dance. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. For benediction, I have chosen one of my absolutely favorite poems. I'm sure you all know it, E.E. Cummings. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and the blue dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and of wings and of the gay, great happening, illimitably earth. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing any, lifted from the no of all nothing, human, merely being doubt, unimaginable you? Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are open. Go in peace.